Hey, y'all. So, as I've gone through this process of creating a podcast, it's the Culinary Mechanic Podcast, and the whole time I've been focused on chefs and operators and helping those people get better at the craft of running a restaurant. And I encountered a lady, and it just sort of made my brain spin a little bit. And she works as a salesperson to help restaurants acquire and retain expense account guests. I love the fact that she spent a lot of time on the other side where she was a salesperson, taking people out to dinner, and really experiencing things from the guest side. And with that, I really feel like she's this secret weapon for a lot of restaurants, being able to bring in another segment of the population to sit down and dine in their restaurants. So her name is Laura Wilber, and I really think you're going to find some fascinating insights from this. So here we go. We're just going to do the thing. You're listening to the Culinary Mechanic Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Zatyrka, the founder of Culinary Mechanic, a restaurant advisory firm focused on making kitchens and restaurants run like well-oiled machines. With this podcast, we aim to bring you insights, strategies, tools, and tactics, and sometimes just good old advice and stories that are going to help you run your restaurant better. I hope you dig it, because honestly, it's a real labor of love. One thing you could do that would help me a whole lot is to go anywhere that you listen to podcasts and leave a 5-star review. That'll help get the word out so that more people will hear this podcast, and hopefully we can help more restaurants run just a little better. Now please, enjoy the show. Today I am joined by Laura Wilber. And you help acquire guests and retain guests for fine dining and restaurants in general, expense accounts. Is that right?
That's right. Every level of service, from your morning coffee to your last call at the bar to a quick drive-through, any food or beverage need you have when you're traveling for official company business, that's what our company does.
That's awesome. Well, welcome. I am so excited to have you on the Culinary Mechanic Podcast. I think that you and I we've danced around a networking group that we're in together, and had a couple of different interactions. I believe on probably LinkedIn. But I was really excited about the idea of bringing you on, because years ago I was part of a fairly large company. I was working for a restaurant down in just outside of San Francisco in a little place called Burlingame, which is about a mile or two south of the San Francisco airport. And this was during the Great Recession. Ooh, the big words, but it was a time when sales were hard to come by, and I looked around and realized I'm dealing with business travelers who have expense accounts, and what do they want more than anything else? They want the city food, right? They're right next to their apart. They're traveling through, one of those food cities of San Francisco, but they're for whatever reason their hotel is 11 miles to the south. So as the chef, I really targeted how I was going to almost attack that market and really get that expense account diner that wanted a city feel in a suburban restaurant that sat on the water and great views and all those things, but gave somebody the ability to have some really great food. And I knew it was their expense account, and I knew that we were going to be able to make some money. But then I take all of that, and I meet you, and I go, oh man, this would be fun to have you on. So once again, welcome. And I think that I would really love to know how, how I know that you have done and do sales, but how did you get kind of adjacent or get to the restaurant industry? That's my big question for
Okay. Thank you, Simon. And when we spoke briefly yesterday, too, you had shared the Burlingame story, and I'm from Walnut Creek, My first job in restaurants was when I was in high school, and it was at Charlie Brown's restaurant. They may have had an Emeryville location too, but this one was in Concord, California, in the Willows Shopping Center. I think I lasted 2 weeks because my job as the hostess was to tip out the wait staff at the end of the night. And everyone would get off at the same time, and they would descend on my little hostess booth and say, "All right, where's my money? Where's my money?" And I had to calculate really fast what they were going to get in their tips. And
Wow.
for a 16-year-old English focused person, not math, it was just so overwhelming. I was so incredibly stressed out every night. And like I said, I just said the seating and the chatting with the people was great, but the figuring out their
That
tips
sounds
all on,
daunting for a young any young person.
yeah, it was
I don't know.
ridiculous. So yeah, that was my one and only time that I actually worked at a restaurant. And then my job after that was doing something that really helped me figure out my love of sales. And that was working at Any Mountain, a specialty ski shop, selling
Oh,
custom
cool.
orthotics for ski boots. And when I got my first paycheck, I said, "You're kidding me. I get paid to do this. Like, there's no chance that you could have this much fun and also make money." So I've
Oof.
been in sales ever since.
Yeah. I Man, that's the dream for any job, right? Like to feel like the pay is a bonus. I
Oh,
love that.
completely. Yeah, because there was free skiing and yeah, like free lift tickets to Squaw Valley and a chance to ski with Olympians like the Phil and Steve Mayer were, regulars for Marker. They were sponsored by Marker, which was one of the brands we sold. And so we got to ski with them a bunch. So that was a ton of fun. And then from there, started in radio sales, radio advertising, was national sales
Wow.
manager at Clear Channel Radio Los Angeles. Spent a lot of time whining and dining my customers. We would go to New York City for a week every quarter and ask our buyers, which Michelin starred restaurant haven't you dined at yet? Get reservations, experience some of the best food in the world in New York City and every big city across the US. And I remember feeling sometimes like it was Groundhog's Day because the tasting menus were so similar. Starting in New York, working your way across the country, Chicago and Seattle and San Francisco. And there was a time that a rhubarb sorbet type of cleansing palate uh, entree
Thing.
or yeah thingy that was popular starting in New York, and then it just moved
Ah,
its way all the way across the country, and it was a good problem to have, right? But it really opened my eyes into how much money is spent on client entertainment, and it's a business expense way beyond just needing to eat for fuel, right?
right.
It's an experience. And so my level of appreciation for chefs and operators that take great pride in every step of that experience is very great. And you can have incredible tasting food and an incredible experience at every level of dining service.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's an interesting thing. There's so many times when I meet chefs and I meet operators who don't necessarily have the same appreciation you have for what you've experienced because they're always so busy working. It's just I think it's one of those deep thought conversations for another day, but like to understand that like there's so many things to be experienced from the outside, right? That it doesn't necessarily like I think that's a great lesson that you can take your experiences as a diner and really amplify what you can share with a restaurant operator to make them better, right? Like, I mean, my one of my best tools is my wife. I will take my wife to a place that I'm talking to if I'm when I was looking to be the chef of the restaurant or the sous chef, or now if I'm going to be doing some consulting, I'll say, "All right, what do you think?" And she's like, "Wow, uh, the the host is rude, the server was rushed, the food took forever, and the bathrooms are dirty.
Oh no.
It's like, oh man, I don't know. Okay, maybe
Tell
we
me
need
how
to
you
rethink
really
this,
feel.
right? But
Yes.
so I think it's a great, um uh, honestly, I think that's a great superpower for you, you
Thank
know?
you. Thank you. Well, and something that, you know, in our conversation earlier, Simon, about um and in our networking group, Rising Tide, for on Wednesdays and Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific, you and I both attend this
You know?
great networking group live on LinkedIn. But one of the threads of topics that has come up kind of repeatedly, and it came up again today, was the idea of kind of finding your why and also being your authentic self, right? And so
Yeah,
to me, a restaurant that is its authentic self and has a why and an identity, and you can absolutely feel that, and it's so, I mean,
absolutely.
I can completely get tears in my eyes when I sit down at a restaurant and I taste something, and it's just so rare to have that type of rich flavor profile. It just happened to me at a restaurant in Charlotte, North Carolina called Fig, and it's a very popular restaurant. It's hard to get a table. We couldn't get a reservation, and my friends were it was a girls trip. It was just about 2 months ago. My friends all said, "Okay, can everyone go on at 4:59 p.m. to try to get this reservation for a month from now?"
Gambit.
My comment was, I think this place has gotten too big for its britches. Let's go somewhere else. Right? I was like, what are we doing? And somebody's like, nope, we got to try this place. And so we sat down, and at first bite, literally my eyes welled up with tears. And I said, I'm so thankful that you were so persistent to get us a reservation here. It was at 5 p.m., which is fine. Early bird special, right?
Yeah,
Um, it was so well worth the effort. It was just next level outstanding. And it's just so much fun when you come across a restaurant like that because, some places have hype because of, I don't know, celebrity or something. But this place, and there are tons of restaurants like this that it's just the food is so much better, you
yeah,
know? So it's
yeah.
fun when you discover those.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by the grind of running your kitchen? Imagine, kitchen's humming along, people are on task, and you have the time to be creative and still make it home to see your family. Well, Culinary Mechanic is here with the strategies, tools, and tactics to help you be the leader everybody wants to work with. If you'd like to find out more about how Culinary Mechanic can help you run your restaurant like a well-oiled machine, I invite you to use the link in the show notes to book a 30-minute free consultation call.
Absolutely. I mean, I live for that kind of stuff. Always have. I've definitely chased that feeling of, gosh, I'm doing something that really the food resonates from my being, right? And for me, it was always, would my grandma be proud of this? Is this a flavor that is discernible and distinct and kind of on that warm side of things that would just make my little tiny grandmother proud of what was going forth. So no, I think that the ability to really hone in on the why of what you're doing and who you are and being clear about the identity. I had this conversation recently, and just like there's just no end to the benefit of being clear about who you are, right? And I feel like that's a life lesson, but nevertheless, it's a business lesson, especially for restaurants that are trying to really push a higher. It's one thing if you go to a taqueria and you pay $2.49 for a taco. It's another thing when you sit down and you get a perfectly, sliced piece of duck and you don't get the sides, you just get the middle, right? And it's $50 and you're like, oof, gosh, this better be good because there isn't much on the plate. And then you bite into it and you're like, oh, what just happened? Right.
Yeah,
That's gold all by itself.
it is. It is.
So tell me, I mean, I guess I would love to hear like how do you work what you do has got to have a magic element. So what is it that you do to help people acquire and retain guests? I mean, tell me about that because
I'd love
that sounds
to.
like magic to me.
Yes. I mean, and it's a tall order, as you know, to, everybody wants to acquire more guests and keep the ones they have, right? So as I mentioned, I started out in traditional advertising sales, radio, right? My proposition for you was, hey, give me a bunch of money. I really hope I send you a customer, but neither of us will ever know, right? That was sort of the proposition of traditional advertising sales. And you had to say, there are no guarantees in advertising. Take a leap of faith with me. You have a great product or service. We have a large, loyal audience. We have enough frequency and a good offer. It really should work. But I have no way to prove to you that it will.
Right.
So as soon as pay for performance guest acquisition was invented, I vowed to never sell traditional advertising again. I believe that I should not get paid and my company shouldn't get paid until or unless we provide value to you. And so thankfully, there is this thing called pay for performance guest acquisition. The company I work for now, Denova, runs a large network of restaurants. So I'll back up a little bit and just tell you the elevator pitch if I can, which is
Absolutely.
we're contracted by global companies and government agencies to procure partnerships with great restaurants for these companies and government agencies teams that are traveling for official company business.
Okay.
These companies have direct partnerships that they set up with airlines, hotel groups, and rental car companies that they can manage one-to-one because there are only a handful of players large enough to accommodate their needs for travel.
Right.
And they've hired Denova about 16 years ago. The company was invented as a way to create a network of restaurants so that they could shift their spending to their partner restaurants instead of their teams just going anywhere when they're in a city, right? So that's really the magic, is that it's part of company policy to, when you're given a company issued credit card, you're trained, okay, you're going to fly American, you're going to drive Hertz, you're going to stay at a Marriott Bonvoy hotel, and you're going to dine at one of these 23,000 restaurants. Because we, as the company, receive a loyalty rebate or some consideration in the case of the airlines and hotels when you choose our partners instead of just going anywhere.
That's awesome. I mean, scary, all together scary that things can be so, for lack of a better term, webbed,
Right. And so,
right? But it's amazing. It's
yeah, so if
amazing.
you're a restaurant across the street who isn't part of the network and you're wondering, why is the guy across the street so busy during the early and middle of the week with these business people, it could be because it's part of their company policy when they're paying with the company card to go to a partner restaurant instead of just
Right.
going anywhere.
Yeah, no, I think that as an operator myself in the past, it was always like, you'd look and go, well, Friday and Saturday is busy, and Sunday before 7 is busy, and if you had brunch, God bless you, you're gonna be, if you do it well, you're gonna be busy. But it's like, well, what do you do on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock? I mean, I worked for a company in LA called the Patina Group, which is now the Patina Restaurant Group.
Yes.
And within every restaurant, there was that special events person, and he or she would be in charge of booking things in that small private dining room we had, or maybe they'd be booking, eight tops or whatever. But I feel like having some form of contract sure makes certain things a whole lot easier. I
Right.
mean, because the goal is to be busy, right? The goal is to be fig, where it's hard to get in,
Yes.
and that all by itself creates some demand because people go, well, I can't get in. I want, we all want what we can't get, you
Of
know.
course.
But no, it's fascinating. It's an interesting model, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so let's go let's turn around just a little bit and say, what are the things that you see like how do you see do you ever see restaurants screw that relationship up? Do you ever see like maybe they get on board and then they don't do a great job? Because I think that just as well as you can have a tool in your toolbox that gets you more sales, you can also screw stuff up. Have you had any of those?
Thankfully, no. And so we still have the first restaurant that ever joined the DeNova network 16 years ago as part
Awesome.
of the network. And before I joined the company, I interviewed some restaurants and said, "Hey, why do you stay with DeNova? What is it you like about them?" And the short answer was they felt like it was the most cost-effective way to attract and retain the highest value guest in the restaurant. And what's interesting is it's not a huge percentage of any of our restaurants' business, right? So we have 18 million corporate cardholders that are in this program that
Wow.
are traveling all over the country. So we need coverage in every little city across the United States and Canada. And
Right.
for that reason, we have a lot of great chain partners because they have locations everywhere. Jersey Mike's is one of our favorite, success stories just because they've grown so much since they
Right.
started with DeNova about 8 years ago. And we just had um, one of their executives speak to our group last week when we were at our mid-year sales meetings in Florida about the partnership. And it's really it's an answer to the question when they're signing new franchisees. They pay for a lot of things to help these franchisees succeed at Jersey Mike's. They paid for a retrofit for all of their franchisees. It's in the contract that the franchisee will pay for these remodels, but the franchisor Jersey Mike's paid for it for all of them.
Wow.
And they pay the loyalty rebate to the corporations and government agencies that dine at their franchisee locations on behalf of that franchisee. So they really want to set their franchisees up for success. And this is a national
That's
program that's
awesome.
going to drive catering sales midweek, much larger average tickets. It's
Big
50
platters of
to
sandwiches. What could be better than that?
exactly. But yeah, when people are paying with the company's money, they spend 50 to 200% more than when they're paying with their own money.
For
And right
sure.
now, that's so important because of consumers pulling back based on the cost of dining out. Some of them are saying, I really want to try that restaurant, but I'm going to wait until I'm going on a business trip and I can take a client with me because
Yeah.
it's expensive. Right.
Awesome.
But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, Simon, on
No,
just,
I think you
yeah.
did. I think you did. I think it's great. I mean, I view it as like a massive tool to be able to build some sales, supplement some sales. I think that's a great idea, right? It's something that somebody who's building their restaurant business up at some point, it's like, all right, we should be a part of this. And because you're right, I think that people do spend a little bit more when they're on expense account. I've got a neighbor across the street, and he has this season that is like springtime for him, where he travels a lot, and it's all about, it sounds like he does HR training, right?
Okay.
So he jumps around the country, and he's like, man, I was in San Diego, I was in Chicago, I was in New York, I was in Tampa. And I'm like, when? He's like, oh, in the last 3 weeks. I'm like, my goodness.
Whoa.
And so it's him rolling out projects and programs, and in the evening, he gets to go out to these great restaurants. He's like, yeah, I mean, and especially when I'm there with my boss likes good scotch. It's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But it's
You wait
great.
until it's on the expense account and it's a bona fide business expense, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, I know that for myself as a small business operator, I I look at certain things and I'm like, okay, so I would like to woo this client to be working with me. Perhaps we should go out to dinner and just like stop and slow down and talk. And I know that I can write it off as a business expense, and that's
Yeah,
definitely a plus. I surely don't have the account that some do, but that's okay.
that's
Um,
as long as you get that tax break, right? And kind of back to that idea of finding your why as a restaurant and being your authentic self. So much of that is the founder, the operator. Everybody loves to know the origin story.
yeah.
Um, as you said yesterday, Batman Begins, right?
Ah,
So
I
I feel
mean,
like that's something of value that we could offer to our restaurant friends, is just to help coach them on getting back to what inspired them to start this restaurant. Was there a
yeah,
signature dish? Was there something that was so exciting to them that they wanted to take this massive risk and investment to open the doors and have people experience it? And I feel like the further we get away from our authentic self, the less compelling we become to our customers and to the world. We all really, especially today and with AI and everything else, we're just looking for that sense of what's real, what's authentic,
for
what's
sure. I mean, I think that so many times, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you
no,
there.
please.
So many times it's we s- we as businesses, or we as operators of almost any business, you start off with this grand vision, and then for whatever reason things slide to the middle, and then all of a sudden you're a commodity. And I think that as soon as you're a commodity, the competition becomes massive. I think
Oh,
that
wow.
I think about the leader of that of our networking group, Sean Walchef, and he's just always talking about the story, right? He's always talking about what is the story that kind of drives that behavior for you. And it's not just your why, but it's like, well, why do you do this? Well, I do that because my grandfather said, or I do this because that's how we do it in my family, or whatever those specifics may be. I think that each individual action can have its why, but I think you're right. I think the authentic self, um, really pushing things forward, is a great business model, right?
Yeah.
I think for me as a advisor and consultant, and I guess on some levels a coach, my why is, and for this podcast, my why is I I get tired of seeing great restaurants close, because I can't tell you how many it's like, oh, it's that one and it's just down on the corner and they're amazing and the service is great, but hey, they don't run their business like the business that it is. And next thing you know, they're out of business. And it just kills me. I just can't do it. Like, so
Right.
at this point in my life, I try to help people to run their restaurant as a really high functioning business, right? And really operate the machine of it all well.
Excellent. That's an incredible service and gift, because again, if chefs are creative types and artists, and um, they absolutely need a coach like you who's going to help them put systems in place and kind of checklists and things, um, that they don't have to reinvent themselves. And
Totally.
that's an incredible service, because like you know, having experienced some of these incredible restaurants throughout my life and as a business traveler, those restaurants are really expensive to operate. They're,
Oh
the
yeah.
ingredients are expensive. They're just good. Um, so if we start losing those rare top level restaurants and everything starts to become more vanilla,
Yeah,
our
that's no fun.
experience and our reason to dine out is going to continue to diminish and
Yeah,
decrease.
I mean, uh, I remember it was probably about 7, 8 years ago. People were like, "Oh, fine dining's dead." I'm like, "No, it's not, man. It's just there's just slightly more select group of people that are fine dining, that are doing fine dining, that are able to afford the fine dining. It's not dead. I think that, those top level restaurants hold a place. It's interesting. I just all of a sudden my brain just went spark. But you mentioned the tasting menus, and I just read an article about, the world's 50 best restaurants and how this restaurant, I can't even remember which magazine it was, but they just blasted a
Like,
couple of these top world class restaurants because like the number 2 restaurant in the world or something like that has a 50 course tasting menu. And I'm like, what are you serving them? Like nickel sized portions? But at the
mhm,
same time, like how much is too much?
that's
I mean, I remember when people would say, oh, 7 courses is too many.
yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
I
it
mean,
can
and
get
I know that like at this point in my life, I don't eat that much food in a day or at one sitting. I'm sure I eat enough, right? It takes a good amount to maintain this frame, but it's like I go out to eat now and I'm like, I'm winded, you
yes,
know,
yes.
but
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like, I don't even know how you make a course small enough that I can get 50 of them in my mouth,
Oh,
you know.
nor would you want to.
Um,
Definitely.
and so I find that there's some fun trends out there that are like, it's amazing to think about, and I think that the writer of that article was talking about how these restaurants are very ego driven and very almost immersive experience as a 4 letter word. And I thought, oh wow.
Yeah. But
I remember when that was like a term that you used as like the next level, and now it's almost kind of like many
uh,
things have turned.
but it's interesting that you brought up when you worked in um okay, what was it? What was the city?
Burlingame.
Burlingame. Okay, yeah. So in the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, it really did become in poor taste to dine out at those Michelin starred restaurants because so many people were losing their homes, and it was just sort of considered, excessive
Yeah.
and mismanagement of company resources. And I remember companies that used to do incentive trips, right? Like spend this much money and you get to go to Europe. Like they pulled the plug on that
Yeah.
because it just was considered to be in poor taste. Again, people were losing their homes. And a lot of great restaurants went out at that time that were reliant on people, using their expense account to entertain
Totally.
clients there. But again, when you think about a 50-course tasting menu, if you want to get to know your customer really, really well, that's a lot of time to spend together and have conversation. And I mean, yeah, I think 5 courses is plenty to do that with, but it really is an experience where you are really stepping away from your day to day and you're having a chance to converse and enjoy the food together and maybe a wine pairing or something. And it's just a
Yeah.
rare opportunity to get to know somebody better. And so,
Yeah.
for that reason, I think it's it, companies make an investment in that and are looking for great places to have those conversations with their customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. The 50 or the 20, whatever, that all feels
Excessive.
um it, yeah, it definitely also feels like it's just sort of a different thing nowadays, right? Like you're going to create you're trying to create a different kind of experience, right? I think that a tasting a shared tasting menu experience, like you say, 5 7 courses, kind of in that realm. I think it allows for some conversation. If you're eating 25 bites, you're working hard right there. Like, that's 3 hours of like you're putting things in your mouth the entire time. I think that um, that almost negates kind of what can be for a business dinner, right?
Yeah, true. You're so busy trying to get through all your courses. But if they
Yeah,
time
it's too much.
right, which they always do, and all the plates drop at the same time, And then you get to talk about, what are you tasting? What did you like? It's just a
Absolutely.
fun
No,
experience.
absolutely. I mean, I love, and then there's the interaction of the the wine you're drinking or the whatever you're drinking with it, and how does that work? Oh, that didn't work, you know.
Right. Or where did have you traveled to this place? Or, what does this remind you of? There's so many fun things that you can, again, get to know somebody better through food. And as I mentioned before, with what we do for our corporate clients, it's really not just fine dining. That's a really fun part of it, but it really is every dining occasion. And
Nice.
catering has been a really bright spot for a lot of restaurants that are our partners, because business catering has come back in a really big way post pandemic. A lot of companies are trying to lure their teams back that are working remote
Yeah.
and make it exciting on the days that they come to work. So they're providing food and when they never did before. And some of them used to have on-site cafeterias. Some of these companies, they no longer have those. So the restaurants have replaced the
Wow, that's an interest. I hadn't even thought about that.
yeah.
And the corporate the corporate dining cafeterias and bringing in and interesting. Like I say, I hadn't really thought about that. That might go away and be replaced by restaurants.
Yeah. So big opportunity there for sure.
Awesome. So as you stare out into the abyss of restaurants and are looking at, what looking at how restaurants can get more guests, what advice would you have for operators that might be looking towards a de novo type relationship, or just general advice on like guest acquisition? What have you got for us?
Yeah, I think, and thank you for the question. And I'm certainly not an expert, even though I've spent about 3 decades trying to figure this out. But really, first be authentic in your cuisine and your presentation for your community. Be obviously you need to do a great job in your local immediate community around each restaurant. And beyond that, once everything's working with your first location or, in your community, from there, start looking for other channels and other people that don't know about you yet, right? So when you're evaluating new people to talk to about your restaurant, um, do they have a need for what you're serving, right? So I'll say with the business diner, absolutely. When they're traveling, they have to eat out 3 times a day. They don't have the luxury of cooking at home. And then is it a large and growing audience? Yes. With the business diners, again, they've returned to business travel from pre-pandemic levels. And with the catering, they're doing even more of that. So yes, it's
Right.
large and growing. And is there an affordable way to reach this group? And is there an automated way to reach this group? Right? Yes and yes. So with Denova, it's just a small percentage of whatever business Denova sends to your restaurant that we collect as a loyalty rebate and remit it back across all the companies that dined with you the previous month.
Oh,
As a
wow.
thank you, I always say if you were a general manager and you had time to write a handwritten thank you note to your top spenders every month in a really consistent way, do you think that would be meaningful to keep them coming back? And they say yes, but of course, we don't have time to do that. Denova does that for you in the form of that every single month loyalty rebate, saying thank you so much for coming in and being a partner with us. Come back. And so it's fully automated and really affordable. It's self-funding by the nature of the higher average check.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, what a pleasure it's been to chat and to really kind of get a sense of what it is you do, and but also like I say, to understand how powerful it is to have been on the other side of things for so long, then to now be able to help restaurants really fluff up that top line, bring some more to the bottom line. I think that's the goal for any business. So thanks for coming and playing in our sandbox. I really appreciate it. Um, for all of you out there listening, I'm gonna put Laura's social handles and contact info in the show notes so you can find those. Um, and say once again, thank you so much for coming and playing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Simon. I really appreciate you having me. It's been wonderful getting to know you better, and can't wait to talk with you next time.
Yeah. So to all of you out there, hang out and check on the next episode coming out, and we'll look forward to talking to you then. Thank you so much.